Believe in avoidant wanting more. 3 psychological triggers that work. You've been told that people with avoidant attachment styles pull away when things get close. They vanish when it matters most. But let me tell you something that'll flip the script. They don't pull away because of you. They pull away because of how you show up. See, we chase them. We overinvest. We beg for scraps of connection. And what do we get in return? Silence, distance, confusion. But what if I told you you have the power to flip that dynamic, to make even the most avoidant feel something they never expected? Yearning, curiosity, craving. Let's break it down, not with manipulation, not with games, but with psychological precision. Here are the 3 psychological triggers that make an avoidant lean in, not because they're convinced, but because they're compelled. When you're dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, one of the most powerful things you can do is shift the balance of certainty. And here's what that means in simple psychological terms. Be completely certain in yourself, but strategically uncertain in how you show up to them. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding human nature. Certainty, when overdone, kills attraction. Predictability dulls emotional engagement. And if you're always available, always responsive, always pouring out affection on cue, you become the emotional equivalent of background noise. You may be good, but you're not stimulating. You're not challenging. And most importantly, you're not exciting to the nervous system of someone who thrives on space. People with avoidant tendencies have learned, consciously or not, that closeness equals a threat to their autonomy. They associate too much intimacy with losing themselves. So when you bring certainty in the form of, I'm always here, I'll always wait for you, you can do anything and I'll still show up, what you're actually doing is triggering their core fear, not intentionally, but it happens. The more certain they are of your emotional presence, the more they pull away to preserve their own sense of control. It's not that they don't like you, it's that your certainty has taken away their sense of independence. Now flip the script. Imagine instead that you bring full certainty in yourself. That means you're grounded in who you are. You're not chasing. You're not emotionally reactive. You're not checking your phone every 10 minutes hoping for a response. Your world doesn't support them. You have purpose, direction, standards. You're emotionally self-sufficient. That's the foundation. And from there, you introduce just a bit of uncertainty, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that reflects healthy boundaries. Maybe you don't reply immediately. Maybe you don't always initiate the conversation. Maybe you skip the good morning text one day, not out of spite, but because you're busy living your life. What this creates is tension. And tension, when it's handled with intention, builds attraction. The avoidant mind is subconsciously wired to respond to gaps, to wonder, to pull forward when there's a slight lean back. That's when their thoughts begin to shift. Why aren't they texting like before? Did I say something? Are they losing interest? Now, instead of running from you, they're analyzing your energy. They are leaning in. They're curious again. It's not that they love the chase. It's that they feel safest when they aren't being emotionally overwhelmed. And when you step back slightly, not from neediness, but from strength, they feel that space open up. You're not suffocating them. You're not collapsing into them. You're giving them room to feel their own feelings. And ironically, that's what gives them the clarity to actually start missing you. The balance is everything. You remain deeply certain in your worth, your time, your energy, but you become slightly less predictable in how you express it. You're not rude. You're not cold. You're just not always available. You're selective. That creates contrast. That makes your presence feel valuable. And when you do show up, when you do give affection or engage in connection, it lands hard. It means more. Because it wasn't just given, it was earned, it was chosen. This isn't about emotional withholding, it's about emotional alignment. When you stop trying to prove yourself, you naturally create the kind of dynamic that draws an avoidant closer. You shift from being the pursuer to being the person they pursue, not because you played a trick, but because you mastered the subtle art of certainty and uncertainty. And that's the magic. When dealing with someone who leans avoidant, one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that more emotional expression will lead to more connection. It's natural. We want to be seen, to be understood, to be close. But for the avoidant, too much emotional intensity feels like a threat, not an invitation. They aren't necessarily cold or uncaring, but they process emotions differently, where a securely attached person might move closer in response to emotional expression. The avoidant moves away. And it's not because they don't feel, it's because they feel too much and they don't know how to manage it without losing their sense of control. This is where emotional safety becomes key. Not just safety for you, but safety for them. And that doesn't mean coddling them or walking on eggshells. It means learning how to hold your own emotions without projecting them onto the other person. It means being able to say, I'm feeling this, without expecting them to fix it or absorb it. Avoidants are often hypersensitive to emotional neediness, not because they're judgmental, but because it activates their fear of engulfment. They interpret emotional flooding, the overwhelming outpour of feelings, as pressure. They start to feel trapped, like there's no room to breathe. So what actually works, it's not shutting down your emotions, it's showing emotional maturity, emotional grounding. When you're able to feel something deeply and still stay regulated, it creates a powerful energy. It tells the avoidant person, I am safe with myself and I don't need you to carry this for me. That kind of presence is rare. Most people either suppress their feelings completely or pour them out chaotically, hoping to be rescued. But when you find the middle ground, when you stay centered in your emotional experience without losing control, you become magnetic. What you're doing here is creating a subtle but profound shift. Instead of trying to connect through emotional demand, you're connecting through emotional stability. You become the calm in their storm, the safe harbor they didn't know they needed. This allows them to start trusting the connection. They feel like they can exhale around you, not because you're emotionally distant, but because you're emotionally secure. The security makes all the difference. Let's say something happens that triggers you. Maybe they pull away. Maybe they go silent for a few days. Instead of reacting with panic, blowing up their phone, sending long texts, demanding answers, you slow down. You breathe, you reflect. You ask yourself, what am I feeling? What do I need? And how can I express that from a grounded place? When you reach out, you do it calmly. You say, I noticed some distance, and that brought up some stuff for me. I'm here if and when you're ready to talk. That's it. No pressure, no blame, just honest, low-stakes communication. This gives them space to process on their own terms, which is how they operate best. Doesn't mean accepting crumbs or tolerating emotional unavailability. It means giving enough space for them to step forward willingly rather than pushing them into a corner. And when they do step forward, it's more meaningful. It's chosen. That's the kind of connection that lasts. So when we talk about emotional safety without flooding, what we really mean is this. Be the person who can feel deeply without making the other person responsible for regulating those feelings. That's a superpower. It shows emotional intelligence, self-trust, and confidence. And for the avoidant, it's a green light that says this person doesn't want to control me. This person is safe. And when they feel safe, really safe, they start showing up in ways you never expected. They begin to open, to lean in, to test the waters of vulnerability they usually avoid. Not because you pushed, but because you stay grounded while inviting them forward. One of the most overlooked yet incredibly powerful tools in creating emotional pull, especially with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, is strategic absence. It goes against every instinct when you care about someone. Your mind tells you to stay close, to fix things, to bridge the emotional distance as soon as it arises. But the avoidant doesn't respond well to that kind of closeness, especially when it comes too fast or too intensely. They need space, not just as a preference, but as a psychological necessity. When you crowd that space, you're not comforting them, you're triggering their defense system. But when you step back intentionally with clarity and confidence, something surprising happens. They start to notice the silence. Most people misunderstand absence. They think of it as passive, as doing nothing. But true strategic absence is an active choice. It's not ghosting. It's not giving the silent treatment out of spite. It's not manipulation. It's alignment. So you're recognizing that constantly showing up when someone is reciprocating doesn't make you strong. It makes you invisible. When you're always available to someone who doesn't value your presence, they stop feeling the impact of your presence altogether. You become the background noise they've learned to tune out. But when you take your energy back, when you remove yourself from the dynamic with intention and self-respect, your absence becomes louder than your words ever could be. The avoidant is often caught in a push-pull cycle. When you lean in, they pull away. But when you lean out, not with resentment, but with purpose, it disrupts that pattern. It's disorienting to them at first. They're used to people pursuing. They're used to emotional pressure. But when you stop trying to hold the connection together by yourself, when you allow the silence to speak for you, it forces them to face something they rarely have to, their own feel, their own sense of loss, their own realization that maybe they miss your presence more than they admit it. This kind of absence isn't about abandoning the relationship. It's about giving both of you a reset. It's space for them to feel the natural consequences of disconnecting. If they don't feel your absence, they were never connected in the first place. But if they do, that feeling will start to work on them from the inside out. Thoughts will start to bubble up. Why aren't they reaching out? Did I push them too far? Why am I thinking about them more now than I did when they were around? And here's the truth. Desire is born in space. When someone is always in front of you, there's no room for mystery, no room for reflection. But when they step back with strength, it invites curiosity. The mind fills in the gap. That's when the avoidance starts to lean forward, not out of guilt, but out of a renewed sense of interest. Because you're no longer just another person chasing them, you've become someone with self-respect. Someone who values your own time and energy enough to walk away when it's not being met. Strategic absence also gives you clarity. It helps you see whether the connection was truly mutual or whether you were carrying it alone. And that's powerful knowledge. If they return, it's because they choose to. And if they don't, you know it's not because you weren't enough. It's because you stopped overextending and allowed the truth to reveal itself. This approach requires emotional discipline. It's not easy, can feel counterintuitive, but when you practice it with integrity, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of your self-worth, you not only protect your peace, you create the very conditions that allow genuine connection to emerge. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to speak louder, is to step back and let your silence make the noise. So many people go into relationships with the mindset of proving their value, trying to convince someone, especially someone emotionally distant or avoidant, that they're worthy of love, attention, and commitment. They chase, they perform, they overgive, all with the hope that the other person will finally see their worth and respond with the love they crave. But here's the raw truth. Value is not proven through effort. It's embodied through presence. You don't become the prize by chasing someone. You become the prize by becoming the version of yourself that no longer needs to. Avoidant individuals are especially sensitive to this dynamic. The more you try to prove yourself to them, the more you actually lower your perceived value in their subconscious mind. It's not personal, it's pattern recognition. When you move from a place of overinvesting, constantly reassuring, or showing them why they should choose you, you activate their inner alarm system, the one that tells them they're losing their space, their freedom, their emotional control. It doesn't matter how much potential you have or how kind you are. If your energy screams, please pick me, what they hear is pressure, obligation, expectation, and that energy repels them. But when you stop trying to prove and start simply being, everything changes. You show up differently. Your conversations shift. Your body language shifts. Your presence becomes grounded. You're no longer performing, you're expressing. You're no longer chasing validation, you're living in alignment. And the avoidant starts to feel that difference. They don't feel pushed or emotionally smothered. They feel intrigued, attracted, safe. You become someone who is fully in your own lane, with or without them. That's where the magnetism is. You have to remember, people aren't attracted to need. They're attracted to confidence, to clarity, to someone who knows their own worth without needing external confirmation. When you become the prize, it's not about ego, it's about self-respect. It's the quiet inner knowing that says, I don't have to audition for love. I am love. I bring value simply by being me. Think about how this plays out in real time. Instead of anxiously wondering why they didn't text you back, you're busy doing something that lights you up. Instead of crafting the perfect message to make them like you more, you're speaking honestly with no need to sugarcoat. Instead of adjusting your behavior to please them, you're showing up as your full self, knowing that if they don't align with that, it's not a loss, it's clarity. And that energy is powerful because now, instead of being predictable and overly available, you're presenting yourself as someone with depth, with edges, with direction. The avoidance starts to feel that you're not trying to convince them of anything. You're simply living, thriving, and inviting, but not begging. You're extending connection, not demanding it. That feels different. It feels free. And that freedom is exactly what someone avoidant needs in order to stay engaged. This is about emotional posture. You're not standing with your hands out waiting for love to be given. You're standing tall, already full, and offering love from a place of overflow. If they can receive it, amazing. If not, you still stand whole. That's when the dynamic shifts. That's when they begin to feel drawn, not out of guilt or pressure, but because your energy speaks of self-worth. They can't help but notice. Especially with avoidance, the person who feels like the prize isn't the one doing the most. It's the one who knows they don't need to. When you stop proving and start embodying, you stop chasing, and they start noticing. And that's when everything begins to move. Emotional self-sufficiency is one of the most attractive and underrated qualities you can bring into any dynamic, especially with someone who has an avoidant attachment style. Avoidants often associate emotional intimacy with losing control, being smothered, or becoming responsible for someone else's emotional world. The moment they sense that they are being pulled into someone else's emotional storm, their defenses go up. It's not that they lack emotions themselves, they just struggle to regulate their own. So the idea of managing someone else's feelings becomes overwhelming. That's why emotional independence doesn't just create respect, it creates safety. When you can hold space for your own emotions without needing someone else to fix them, validate them immediately, or react to them in a certain way, You project a rare kind of inner strength. You're saying, I'm allowed to feel, but I'm not going to hand you the steering wheel of my emotional life. That communicates maturity. It communicates self-respect. It signals that you are grounded and in control, not of everything that happens, but of how you respond to what happens. And that's what makes you stand out. So many people believe that vulnerability is about pouring everything out, being raw and exposed constantly, and needing the other person to respond with care and reassurance. While vulnerability is powerful when used wisely, constant emotional outsourcing is not vulnerability, it's dependency. It puts pressure on the other person to regulate you, to carry you, to show up a certain way or else. Avoidants pick up on that pressure fast, even when it's subtle. It makes them want to back away. But when you can express how you feel from a centered place, like saying, I'm feeling off today, but I'm taking care of it, or I miss you, but I'm good either way, you strike a balance that is incredibly appealing. You're not suppressing your truth, but you're not expecting someone else to manage it either. That's rare. That's magnetic. Emotional self-sufficiency also means you don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. You know who you are. You know what you bring to the table. If someone pulls away, it doesn't shake your foundation. You might notice it, feel it, even miss them, but you don't unravel. You don't collapse. That kind of resilience is what actually inspires connection and avoidance. They begin to trust that being close to you won't cost them their sense of freedom or identity. It's also a powerful mirror. When someone sees that you don't panic when things get uncertain, they often start to reflect that energy back. You set the emotional tone. Instead of being reactive, you become steady. Instead of demanding, you become inviting. And in that steadiness, the avoidant can finally start to feel something they rarely feel in connection: relief. They can exhale. They can soften. And slowly they can begin to open, not because you pushed, but because your emotional independence created space for connection to unfold naturally. One of the most crucial aspects of interacting with an avoidant person is establishing strong emotional boundaries. This doesn't mean putting up walls or becoming distant. It means defining your own emotional limits in a way that fosters respect and maintains attraction. When you allow someone to consistently cross your boundaries without consequences, you unintentionally teach them that you don't value yourself enough to protect your emotional space. Avoidants who value autonomy and freedom are often drawn to people who have clear boundaries because it signals strength and self-respect. By standing firm on what you will and won't tolerate, whether it's excessive, emotional withholding, lack of communication, or inconsistency in effort, you not only protect your own well-being, but you also inspire respect from the avoidant. When they see that you won't bend or compromise your values just to keep the peace, they will begin to view you as someone who is worthy of their time and energy. This creates a dynamic of mutual respect where both people can feel emotionally safe and valued, which ultimately fosters attraction. When dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, it's essential to embrace patience and give the relationship time to evolve at its own pace. Avoidants need space to process their emotions and come to their own conclusions about intimacy and connection. Trying to rush or force emotional closeness can lead to resistance and push them further away. Instead, by allowing the relationship to develop gradually, you give them the opportunity to feel secure in their own time. The key is to remain consistent in your presence and actions without pressuring them for immediate results or rapid emotional investment. As they feel less pressure and more safety, they'll gradually open up and engage more deeply. Emotional growth takes time. By showing patience, you demonstrate trust in the process and in their ability to come closer when they're ready. This approach fosters a deeper bond where both people can build a foundation of trust and mutual respect rather than rushing into a connection that may not yet be fully formed. One of the most compelling ways to engage with an avoidant is by being genuinely yourself without any hidden agenda or expectation of how they should respond. Authenticity is magnetic because it's rooted in confidence and self-assuredness. Avoidants are highly attuned to any form of manipulation or hidden motives, and if they sense that someone is being inauthentic or has an underlying agenda, they will instinctively pull away. However, when you show up as your true, unfiltered self, without trying to be someone you're not to win their approval, you allow them to see your real character, not just an idealized version of it. This allows space for genuine connection to form. You're not trying to change who you are to make them feel comfortable or earn their love. You're simply offering your most authentic self. This, in turn, allows them to feel more comfortable being themselves around you. In a dynamic with an avoidant, this is crucial because they are more likely to be drawn to someone who is genuine and who can comfortably stand in their own truth without constantly seeking reassurance or approval. Subtle curiosity is one of the most powerful psychological triggers when it comes to sparking interest, especially in someone with an avoidant attachment style. Avoidants aren't typically drawn to deep emotional conversations right away. In fact, when they sense that someone is trying to dig too deep, too fast, they instinctively retreat. It's not that they don't have depth, it's that they guard it. So if your approach is to immediately uncover their entire emotional landscape or force vulnerability, they're going to shut down. But curiosity, real, calm, non-invasive curiosity is different. It gently invites rather than demands. It opens a door and lets them decide if they want to step through. When you lead with curiosity instead of pressure, you create a low-risk environment for them to reveal themselves. It could be something simple like genuinely asking, what was the best part of your week? Or what kind of stuff gets you fired up? These questions seem casual on the surface, but they give the avoidant space to share things that matter to them without feeling like they're being psychoanalyzed or interrogated. The trick is not to jump on their answers with too much intensity. Stay relaxed. Let them have the space to open up at their own pace. Curiosity also gives you a chance to observe instead of just react. When you're truly curious about someone, not to win them over, but to understand them, you stop projecting your own expectations onto them. You stop writing stories in your head about what every action or inaction means. You start asking better questions, both internally and in conversation. That energy shift is incredibly attractive because it moves you from a place of neediness to presence. You're not there to control the interaction. You're there to explore it. There's also something magnetic about being the kind of person who's genuinely curious about life, not just the other person. When you live with curiosity, when you're constantly learning, exploring, and growing, that energy radiates. It's engaging. It's refreshing. People want to be around that, especially someone avoidant who is subconsciously wired to avoid emotional heaviness. Your curiosity becomes a source of lightness. It keeps things dynamic. It keeps them wondering what's next with you. The beauty of curiosity is that it works both ways. When you show subtle interest in someone's inner world without trying to control, fix, or diagnose, it often awakens their interest in yours. They begin to ask questions. They want to know what makes you tick. They start leaning in, not because you demanded it, but because you created an atmosphere of discovery instead of emotional pressure. This creates a rhythm that avoidance can actually relax into, a flow. There's no rush, no forced timeline, just two people getting to know each other with ease, depth, and intention. And in that energy of gentle curiosity, connection can finally begin to grow, organically, sustainably, and on their terms, which is exactly how they need it to feel. In conclusion, by understanding the delicate dance of attraction with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, you can create a connection that is deep, meaningful, and sustainable. The key lies in balancing certainty and uncertainty, offering emotional safety without overloading, embracing strategic absence, embodying your own value, practicing emotional self-sufficiency, and nurturing a subtle curiosity. Each of these triggers creates the space for a natural, compelling bond to form, allowing them to lean in at their own pace. Thank you for taking the time to explore these powerful psychological triggers with me today. Remember, the right connection starts with mastering yourself first.